Welcome. First, I'll talk about some of the reasons that prompted me to produce this video after more than 5 years of continuous research to uncover the truth about the flat Earth. The issue of the Earth has been controversial since ancient times. Some believe it is flat, while others believe it is spherical. Each side has its own logical explanation. I'll start with the reasons that flat earthers have relied on from ancient times until now. I'll refute all the phenomena that occur on Earth, offering a logical solution. The video will be very long, but I consider it an important reference for both sides. Anyone who disputes my arguments should respond in a scientific and organized manner, as I do. For a person to be convinced that the Earth is spherical, that there is no top or bottom, and that water bends over it, the evidence must be conclusive and logical. We all know that the first reason was the disappearance of ships over the horizon. This is explained by the law of perspective and the use of a telescope to clearly see the ship. The second reason is how the sun rises and sets, and I'll discuss it at the end of the video. The third reason is the formation of the southern stars, the crucifixion constellation, in various shapes in the southern cities. I created a 3-dimensional model of the movement of the southern stars, completely accurate to reality. The fourth reason is solar and lunar eclipses. I created a model and concept for solar and lunar eclipses, which is also explained at the end of the video. I also explained in detail how satellites work, how they don't need to be at an altitude of 35,000 kilometers, and how they exist in nature in detail. I will discuss the viewpoint of the most important scientists. I will begin with Eratosthenes. He was the first to calculate the circumference of the Earth. He knew that the sun's shadow in Aswan was perpendicular to the Earth, but at the same time, it was not perpendicular to it in Alexandria, where the shadow was 1/50th, because the circle was then 50 degrees, not 360 degrees, as it is now. Eratosthenes assumed, without any evidence, that the sun's rays were parallel. This is an unproven assumption. Eratosthenes measured the distance between Aswan and Alexandria, which was 800 kilometers. Since the shadow in Aswan was 0 and the shadow in Alexandria was 1 at the same time, therefore, the distance is very far and constant. If the Earth were a rotating sphere and its shadow changed from 0 to 1 over a distance of 800 kilometers, it would return to the same place after 24 hours. Since a circle is equal to 50 degrees, the number of degrees in a circle multiplied by the distance of 800 kilometers equals the circumference of the Earth, which is 40,000 kilometers. The answer shows that there are two assumptions based on algebraic force. The first is that the sun is large, distant, and stationary, and the second is that the sun's rays are parallel. We see with our eyes that the sun's rays are not parallel. Using the same reasoning used by Eratosthenes, I say that the distance between Riyadh and Egypt is 1,670 kilometers. The time difference between the two countries is 1 hour. The sun returns to the same point after 24 hours, so the circumference of the sun's orbit is 1,670 times 24, or 40,000 kilometers. Without any unproven algebraic assumption, Eratosthenes measured the circumference of the sun's, not the Earth's. But it will be a bit different at the end when I explain how the sun sets and rises again. Very important note. Reply to the telescope allegation. Of course, many of you will mention the telescope and say, we can overcome the distance using the telescope. But the truth is completely different. First, you must know some information about the telescope. In order to use the telescope, it must be well fixed on a fixed object. If you put the telescope on a moving object, you will not be able to observe through it at all. If the telescope is fixed on a flying plane, it cannot be used. If the telescope is fixed on a moving car, it cannot be observed through it. If the telescope shakes, the image disappears. This is the biggest evidence that the Earth is fixed and does not move, because if it were moving, the telescope would not work. Secondly, you think that the telescope can see millions of light years away, because you believe that what is in the sky is millions of light years away from you. To know the truth, you must know the telescope's real distance on Earth. We have all seen the Burj Khalifa in Dubai photographed with a telescope from a distance of 100 kilometers. The tower appeared from this distance during the day and almost disappeared. So, the telescope's range is not as you think, zrania, but rather very limited, and helps you bring distant objects closer to see them with greater accuracy. We understand from this that the transparency of air is this is the dish used. The satellite wave is reflected on it and gathers on the LNB, as you can see in the picture. We must understand a very important piece of information, that the satellite rays are reflected and not, as they say, that they are not reflected. And if they are not reflected, they cannot be received. Secondly, if there is a barrier in front of the dish, you cannot receive the wave because it is reflected on the barrier, and it will not reach the dish, the stratosphere layer above the Earth, by 50 kilometers, if there is a satellite at an altitude of 35,000 kilometers. This means that the wave reaches this layer and bounces back to the satellite. The wave will not reach the ground. The subject, in brief, is that points were arranged in the stratosphere, as in the picture, and each point was called a satellite with a certain degree. The studio transmits through its own dish. The wave reaches the stratosphere and bounces back to the ground, in all directions. The broadcast piece in the studio is not compatible with the pieces installed on our floors in homes. There is only one piece compatible with it, with a party whose wave is received and rebroadcast with a piece compatible with the dishes we have and we can receive from it. In the drawing, I explained that the beam coming out of the studio's broadcast is red because it cannot be received on our dishes and is rebroadcast with the other piece that is compatible with our dishes in green. In-flight internet service on airplanes. This image shows the in-flight internet service on airplanes from the website of the telecommunications company STC. By placing a Wi-Fi signal receiver at the bottom of the plane and receiving from communication towers along the way. The matter is clear and does not need words. Southern stars. This image is used by astronomers to prove that the Earth is spherical and cannot be flat. You will notice that they drew the shapes of the southern stars that appear in some cities, as is the order from left to right. Santiago, Johannesburg, Jakarta, Sydney, Papeete. And each group of stars is a specific symbol whose direction differs. I took a picture of the Sydney stars and put it on the flat Earth map. And I put the picture of Sydney on Sydney, and I made the picture rotate around the map so that every degree it rotates around. The axis rotates with it a degree around itself. You will notice a complete match for the shapes of the southern stars from one picture. And note that in order for the correct shapes to be formed, the stars must rotate twice. And in the spherical theory, the stars are fixed because they are millions of light years away, and the movement is only apparent as a result of the Earth's rotation. Watch the video and see when the stars are placed on the ball, they cannot match. Santiago, perfect match. Now I stopped at Johannesburg and put the picture that astronomers drew, Papeete, perfect match, of the shape of the stars in Johannesburg at the top. It matches the picture of the stars that rotate. Johannesburg perfect much. Sydney perfect much. Jakarta perfect much. Johannesburg perfect much. Santiago perfect match. Papeete perfect match. Here we watch the match on a rotating ball, and let's not forget that the stars in the spherical theory are fixed and move with an apparent movement as a result of the rotation of the Earth. And this is according to what they claim, that it is millions of light years away from us. So I did everything they said and put the picture of the stars that appear in Sydney at the beginning in Sydney and waited to see the apparent movement of the stars. And I found that all the cities of the south will see the stars in the same way that they appear in Sydney. It is a sad thing. I tried to do justice to the ball so that it would win. But the flat earth won the gold cup deservedly. I know that this video is shocking to those who believe in the spherical theory, and they may stop thinking and start insulting me. This is normal for someone who has lived his entire life believing in a theory and does not doubt it for a single moment. Of course, it will be a shock, and the senses will work to defend without thinking. But I ask you to take your time and watch the video a second and third time and think about the matter and try to defend in scientific ways. If you fail, then the matter is up to you. Either you believe logical words that you cannot deny with a strong The phenomenon of the moon's perpendicularity in the Arab region was noticed on March 5, 2025 until March 15, 2025, where the moon appears in the east and you see it as a vertical ball and the observer is in the middle of the distance between the east and the west and advances towards the observer in a straight line without changing the angle, and when it approaches, the observer sees it completely horizontal, one face to the ground and the other to the sky. And when the observer passes it and heads to the west and moves away, you see it again as if it were a vertical ball. We know that the moon is closest to an observer when it is directly overhead. At that time, the view is closest and clearest. As long as the moon is moving without changing its angle, you should see the dark side during the perpendicular phase. However, this does not happen. Also, when it is directly overhead, an observer located midway between east and west sees it horizontally, while another observer located to the east sees it vertically, because the moon is considered to be in the west. For those standing in the east at the same time, we conclude that the moon is a light pointing toward the earth and the other pointing toward the sky. When it is far away, the view is distorted. Also, since the moon is smaller than the earth, if it is spherical, the phase should vary from one place to another because the angle of view varies from one place to another on Earth. However, they deceived us with the spherical theory as they presented the phases of the moon from a single angle. However, in reality, the angle of view varies from one place to another depending on the observer's location, and not everyone can see a constant phase as happens in reality. Here we see how they explain the moon's varying angles from one place to another on the globe. You also witness a completely illogical and inconsistent vision. You must concentrate carefully and place yourself in each location to understand the deception you are being subjected to without realizing it. Based on what happened in the Arab region this month, when the moon appeared completely horizontal at the time of its perpendicularity, the moon should have been horizontal, with one side facing Earth and the other facing the sky. Otherwise, we would have seen different phases of the moon from every location, as I explained in the explanation. Thus, you will find that perspective is formed automatically from every location on Earth in a simple and logical way. Here you notice that from every location on Earth, you will see different phases of the moon at the same time. The moon cannot be spherical, as everyone believes, and I think the point is pretty clear. The phases of the moon do not differ from one location to another on Earth. Only the angle varies, and the phase is constant. This is a very simple experiment that proves that there is no space or void. You can do the experiment with a plate and water, 3 coins to allow the air to escape from the cup, and a candle. After lighting the candle, place a cup over the coins to cover the candle. The oxygen inside the cup runs out, and the candle goes out. As a result of heating the air inside, its density decreases and some of the air comes out. In this case, water enters and rises inside the cup. If you try to heat the cup with an external heat source, the water will rise and replace the air. If gravity is unable to hold on to water, and if there is a vacuum above us, it will swallow everything that exists. It will be like the lie of black holes. We are living in the biggest lie in history. They falsified all the facts so that the Earth is a ball wandering in space. How can it be a free ball in space, and earthquakes occur in places, and the rest of the ball is fixed without movement? Please do not say tectonic plates, and if you are convinced of that, then you should make a tectonic ball part of it vibrates, and the rest of the parts are fixed, and it is free in space. That is enough. Argument, or you stay as you are. Reflection. A simple experiment you can do is to fix a light source on a glass plate. While you are moving and the light source is fixed, you will find the reflected focus moving with you wherever you move. This is what happens with the moon and stars. This is a map of night and day, from the location of night and day, in a 24-hour Sunday in the south. You will notice that they are using a flat map and not a ball, because the movement cannot be applied to a ball. You will also notice, as you can see, the night covers only Australia and Antarctica, and this is not possible on the ball. As you can see, this cannot be applied to the globe, because one half of the globe must be dark and the other half daytime. As you can see, if Asia and Africa appeared together, they would occupy half the area of the globe. So how would the Americas appear? I would like to clarify that there is no gravity and no spherical Earth. The Earth is fixed, and we are on it because of density. Density is the controller of whether you stay on the ground or fly. I would like to clarify that if you climb the stairs, you feel tired because you are resisting density, and vice versa. If you heat a bottle and put a ball on its mouth, you will see the ball rise and fall again because the density of the air, when exposed to heat, decreased. Therefore, it forced the ball to rise in order to rise to the place that suits its density. If we assume the impossible, that there is space, and you push a body with a motive force towards it, what happens? First, if this body has pressure, it will explode immediately. Just as the submarine exploded underwater, any compressed body explodes in a vacuum. Second, the mass of this body in a vacuum is the highest density possible because it is in a vacuum. As I learned, when the air is heated in the bottle, it forces the ball to rise, meaning that it generates a motive force towards its path and the appropriate medium. A falling force will be generated at a high speed towards the ground, and it will fall immediately. How does a helium balloon fly? Its density is less than air. How does a balloon fly? When the air is heated, its density decreases and it rises. How does an airplane fly? The mass is exposed to a larger amount of air by moving the airplane at high speed, so the air mass is larger and thus the air density increases. At this time, the air density is higher than the density of the airplane, so it rises. What if its speed decreases after rising? Its density will increase and it will fall. How does a ship float, even though the density of iron is higher than that of water? We increase the volume of the draft while maintaining constant mass. Thus, the draft of the ship is subject to a greater mass than that of water. By increasing the mass of water, its density increases and becomes higher than that of iron. They claim that Archimedes of Syracuse, Greek Archimedes, circa 287 do. 212 BC, was the first to formulate the law of buoyancy, and it worked just fine without the acceleration of gravity. There is no speed of light. Sound has a speed, but light is instantaneous. Evidence of this is that you see the farthest object in the blink of an eye. If the star is millions of light years away, if you close your eye and open it, it is directed towards the star, you will see it, and you see a beam from beginning to end, you will say, this is a reflection. I say reflection is the speed of light. There is a lot of fabrication in things. Light years were invented so that the spherical theory would succeed. But what is built on falsehood is false. If you use your mind, you will see everything simply and clearly. The matter is not as complicated as you think. Assuming space exists above Earth as they claim, what would happen if we pushed an object toward it with a buoyant force? The density of this object would be very high because it is in a vacuum. If this object had any pressure, it would explode and disappear into space. However, if this object had no pressure, its density would force it to fall with buoyancy toward Earth, because density generates a buoyant force to reach the right environment, as is the case with ships, airplanes, balloons, etc. Newton's third law is irrelevant in space because space contains no medium to generate a reaction. For example, if we assume a rocket in space with a jet engine, since it is impossible to operate the engine in space because it requires a huge amount of oxygen for internal combustion, even if the engine worked, it would be useless. First, there is no medium in which the engine moves. If it expelled gases to generate a reversible reaction, it would be useless because they would dissipate upon exit without generating a reversible reaction. An example is the International Space Station. They claim its speed is 28,000 kilometers per hour, or about 8 kilometers per second. How is this station oriented? The proponents of the ball theory will say that there is no guidance because it works by free fall. I will agree with that, although it is impossible because its high density forces it to fall towards the Earth with a buoyant force. But how does it ascend to and descend from it? Of course, the subject is science fiction, a body with a speed of 8 kilometers per second. What is the speed of the vehicle heading towards it? How is it guided? What is the mechanism of timing and change of speed in space? You will not find an answer to this question in any university in the world. For this reason, there is no International Space Station. The pictures that some take are of aircraft close to Earth and have some different lights and a spatial timeline to deceive the trustworthy among humans. It is not possible to photograph an object the size of a station at an altitude of 400 kilometers, and there is no light force to disperse it all this distance, since the light of the sun itself is blocked by a small cloud. I will not talk about dust particles in the air. The matter is purely mythical, not absolute, and that the greater the distance, the less transparency until it becomes completely non-existent. Before we begin, you should know how far you can see on this map. You will notice that I have placed small dots close together. These dots indicate how far you can see, and beyond this small distance, you cannot see anything. Consider this dot to be a half-sphere fixed above your head that moves with you while you are on the ground. You cannot in any way see what is beyond this sphere or what is outside its borders. To make you believe this, I will give you a very simple example. There is intense lightning at night in some cities, but you cannot see it from other nearby cities. From here, we understand that everything you see in the sky is only in this point or hemisphere designated for you, and part of the sky is reflected on it, and everything in the sky has no effect on the Earth except the sun. The sun is the only one that has a clear effect on life in all its forms, because of the heat that it emits, and we cannot say that it is reflected on these points. After studying and thinking, many things became clear to me, and I want to explain them to you. First, everyone thinks that day is caused by sunlight, and that night is caused by shadow, and that twilight is caused by the sun. The matter is completely different. Day is an independent substance that revolves in the universe and leads to the appearance of daylight on Earth. Day has different properties than night, and one of its properties is that it is energy, and everyone knows that as we can get energy from daylight, twilight is stable on the entire day, but we only see it when the sun's focus is weak. When the day exceeds a certain limit, it interacts with a certain length of twilight and forms a focus for the sun inside each hemisphere or point on the map. Because the day revolves with the night, its effect on each point changes. The more it increases, the stronger the focus becomes, and its temperature rises and rises in its place. The day revolves, and at the same time, rises and falls. When the day rises higher, the area on the ground increases and covers a larger area. In this case, it is winter, and because it rose and the area exposed to light on the ground increased, the power of the day is less, and accordingly, the heat of the sun is less, and the height of the sun is less. And the opposite is when it decreases. As for the night, it is a negative energy, completely opposite to the day. The day reveals the sun, and the night covers it. As for the night, it is a negative energy, completely opposite to the day. The day reveals the sun, and the night covers it. The night covers the sun only because it is the only one that has a focus of day and twilight. This explains how the night is in some places close to the sun at a time when the sun appears at greater distances. If you apply these things to the model of Walter Bislin's, the model is ideal, but it lacks some additions. First, the eclipse and the lunar eclipse. According to what I mentioned, the day reveals the sun, and the night covers it. There are small and separate parts of the night that revolve in the sky, and when they are at a low level and when they pass in front of the reflected focus, they extinguish it, and the eclipse occurs, and darkness is reflected back to us until it passes, and the matter returns to its previous state. As for the eclipse, because night does not cover the moon, it only passes under it and casts its shadow on it, and the eclipse occurs until it passes. Secondly, add the stars of the southern stars, and we will get to know them with an ideal model of them. Here, I will review all the types of eclipses that you can see, annular eclipses of all types. It depends on the direction of the night's movement and its size. As you can see, and as we said before, the night covers the sun only. Note the types and compare what happens in reality. Here you see another form. Do not forget that when a small part of the center of the sun appears, there is no explanation for it in the spherical theory. Here you see another form. Notice that I've reversed the direction of the eclipse so that it matches what you see from Earth. Depending on the size of the part of the night and its location from the sun, the shape and effect of the eclipse will be dramatic due to its low altitude. If a small part of the day passes through the night, you will see a very faint sun, and everyone will wonder what it is in the sky. Of course, no one will know it is the sun, because it will be so weak, and the reason for its appearance is that it is very close to the twilight belt. Here you see another form. As for the lunar eclipse, there is a slight difference. It is that the night does not cover the moon, but rather it passes under the moon and casts a shadow on the reflected focus of the moon. You can see different colors as a result of the reflection of the stars' lights on the night. We are done with the eclipse and will start to break down gravity and respond to their claim that the Earth is oval in shape. Everyone knows that the waters of the seas and rivers stick to the Earth due to gravity, and that they move and head towards the closest point to the center of the Earth on the circumference of the globe. We will take a practical look at what is said and see if this talk is true, or if it is just unstudied talk that everyone believed without research and investigation. There are those who say and justify certain phenomena by saying that the Earth is oval in shape. Let us see what happens if it is oval in shape. In this case, the radii will be unequal, and the result is that the water will flow towards the point closest to the center of the Earth. The north and south will be empty of any water, and this did not happen. We will leave the oval shape and go back to the spherical shape because it will cause endless problems. Who is this idiot who said that the Earth is oval? It is spherical. But what if there was a completely flat area on the ground, such as the salt desert in Bolivia, for example? According to the fact that water tends to the closest point to the center of the ball, the center of this flat area will be. It is the closest point to the center of the ball. This means that if there is any water on a flat area, it will tend to its center. To imagine it well, like on an orange, cut a part of the orange so that it is completely flat. You will find that the closest point to the center of the orange is the center of the flat part. This means that any water on any flat part must collect in its center. Does this happen? Even in the salt desert, rainwater covers the entire area and does not collect in the center of the flat area. Damn gravity. Remember that the area of the salt desert in Bolivia is completely flat and is 10,582 square kilometers. Even without it, the center of any flat body must be a point of accumulation of water. With an orange, it is ridiculous. We will leave gravity then. It was said that I know the model Walter Bislin's. I was busy making a model for the movement of night and day, and I actually made a 3D model based on the maps of night and day available on the internet because they are correct and cannot be manipulated relatively because each person enters them and sees his place, if it is day or night. And indeed, I implemented the equinoxes with an identical model, and then my dear friend, Sister Lena Biss, sent me the complete. This is Walter Beslin's model of the day and night movement on Earth. As you can see, today's date is displayed on the model, and you can choose any day you want, up to 1,000,000 years ago or 1,000,000 years from now. Since we are at the vernal equinox, where you see night on one half of the Earth and day on the other, and it rotates, you will notice that the sun is at its strongest point during the day relative to the general model, because you see the entire Earth on the map. However, in reality, you will see it within your circle, depending on the strength of the day there. This model can also be completed with southern stars, eclipses, and lunar eclipses with great accuracy. As you can see, the day and night map is logical, unlike the spherical model, which uses a flat map of day and night because it cannot be modeled on a sphere. Thus, I have demonstrated to you the accuracy and logic of the flat Earth map in explaining the phenomena that occur better than the absurdity of the spherical Earth theory, its contradictions, and the inability to conduct any experiments that confirm the spherical Earth theory. I also mentioned the perpetual night in the north and south, as well as the perpetual day.
First of all, we have the theory of gravity. Gravity keeps you on this floor. Gravity attracts everything around its vicinity to create gravity around the Earth. Or, as we say in our astronomy courses, when we teach our kids, gravity sucks. Gravity sucks evenly. It pulls everything to the center. But then Einstein gave us a different picture. Gravity doesn't suck at all. We tell our students, we lied to you. Gravity does not pull you to the floor. Space pushes you down. Why are you sitting in your chair today? Does gravity pull you to the floor? No. There is no such thing as gravitational pull. We lied to you. The space around you is warped. And space itself is pushing you down into your chair. And that's why you're sitting in your chair today.
So there's no experiment you can do. We could look at the decay of a radioactive nucleus or some electricity and magnetism or bounce a ball, have a pendulum, whatever it is. And there's no experiment you can do to tell you whether you're moving or not. And there's no experiment you can do to tell you whether you're moving or not.